Hello and welcome back to another Sky Fantasy Football video. We are back once again with another weekly Q&A where we'll take some questions and dilemmas from Twitter regarding the upcoming game week and then answer them here in this video. Our first question comes in from FPL Bowen, who says Haaland who my plan is Disasi right now and not to go back to Haaland until the overhaul. Do you have any other Chelsea preferences? Palmer's on 4 yellows, Jackson isn't nailed with Nkunku possibly back, Sterling is in and out, as is Silva. Yeah, I think the Chelsea situation right now is just not ideal for anyone. Like, we are sitting in a position where Chelsea players look fantastic to bring in regarding captaincies, and kind of mainly captaincies, but normally in any other situation I would definitely be saying someone like Silva, someone like Palmer look like safe options, but obviously as you stated, Palmer's on 4 yellows, you don't want to be moving on to him just in case he does end up suspended for the singles. Silva again, with his age, is going to be rested quite a lot over Christmas. I think Disasi looks like he's kind of on the same boat as Silva. Like, he does miss the odd game, but he seems to play most games, does get passing. So if you're looking at Disasi, like, that's fair. I would wait and hopefully we get some Nkunku news. I think it is maybe just a week too short for him though. Because I do think Nkunku could be fantastic in terms of captaincies. We did speak about it more but in the game week preview on Tuesday, that Nkunku can kind of cover a lot of the captains, but again, you can't really guarantee, and if he does play on Saturday, is he really going to get much game time? We don't really know, and we don't know how bad or how close he is to actually returning anyway. So I think right now, to be honest, going with Disasi is probably your best option for going for a Chelsea player. Honestly, I'd maybe just look at avoiding Chelsea as like just a total standpoint. Just look at avoiding Chelsea as much as possible. Maybe just skip the captaincy on Christmas Eve, because right now it seems like Chelsea are causing more problems than they are solving them. But yeah, I do think someone like Solanke could be good. Gross, if you're still looking to cover off a Brighton player. Bowen, maybe, if you're looking to maybe skip the Brighton Palace game and then you've got a captaincy for the final day with West Ham and Brighton, could also be an option. But if we're just looking at Chelsea players, I think you're probably are best looking towards maybe Disasi or Thiago Silva. Maybe if Thiago Silva's had his rest now, that'll be him good for Christmas. But again, you can't really guarantee that with anyone in Chelsea right now. So it's a bit of a struggle, but yeah, I think if you're talking Chelsea players, Disasi probably is going to be your best option. The next question comes from Ian, who says, if Sanchez doesn't start on Saturday, should I transfer him out for Neto? I have Palmer and Hwang for single game day cover. I've already got Haaland to Watkins penciled in for Sunday, but we'll be going back to him on the 27th for Nunez. Again, Sanchez is a difficult one because we don't really know the extent of his injury. Petkovic has just been added into the game. He's a 6.3 million. And I don't know, it's a difficult one because you can't really do much before the press conferences, before you actually get official information. I think for me, if Sanchez is going to be missing for one game, I would just be keeping him, because he's going to be back for the overhaul, he's going to be back for Christmas Eve, etc. Don't know how bad the injury is going to be. In terms of getting him out for Neto, I would maybe, again, like, if Sanchez has to come out, he has to come out, but if he's going to be out for like 1 game or 2 games, I don't know if I'd be going for Neto, because yes, Neto is picking up a lot of saves, but they aren't really getting like the most clean sheets. Obviously, they have just recently kept a clean sheet against Palace, but it's Bournemouth. It's not going to be happening consistently. And Neto, you don't really need him for covering captaincies or anything on any day. I think personally, I do think there just is better goalkeepers than Neto out there. I think Leno's probably a bit better. Even Vicario picks up basically the same amount of saves as Neto does in a more solid defence. And again, he is quite cheap. Who else is there? Leno, Vicario. I know it's not great, but you could always go for someone like Areola. That way you've kind of got a captaincy covered if you're looking to skip Brighton. it is always an option. It's probably not the best option, but in terms of the goalkeepers, you don't really want to be making too many transfers, especially when they're not going to be used for like single game days or anything. Obviously, you've already got Haaland to Watkins penciled in for Sunday, which is fine if Haaland is going to miss this game, and I think Nunez to Haaland back in on the 27th looks like a good move. So for me, I don't really like Neto personally. Again, we can't really talk about how long Sanchez is going to be out for, so it's difficult to judge. I think again, if he's going to be out for one game, I would just keep him. If he's going to be out for longer than that, I'd maybe look to try and get as many captaincies as possible filled if you can do that, because I think as long as your goalkeeper is getting saves, you're okay. And obviously Neto is doing that, but I think there's better options that could have a more clean sheet potential than Bournemouth do, and then maybe cover off a captaincy as well. Moving on to Streaky's question, he says, currently got Haaland and Sanchez as my only captaincy cover for Saturday. If both aren't starting, who should I go for? That's actually quite a difficult one, because obviously looking at the games on Saturday, again, there's not really too many captaincies. I think you can't really look at bringing in a City player because they're going to be blanking next week, so that rules that out. Chelsea, again, we just spoke about them. They look like they've got some good fixtures, some good captaincies. You just can't decide on a player. So you're really looking at only Newcastle against Fulham as a captaincy. Isak last week would have been a good option, but now with Callum Wilson back, we don't really know what's going to be happening with that. So maybe you could look towards a Newcastle defender. You know, they've got Fulham this week, then they've got Forest next week, or Luton next week, and then Forest the week after. You could maybe look towards one of those. Obviously, Trippier came off with an injury last night for Newcastle in the Champions League, so we don't know the extent of that. But maybe someone like Shaw could be quite good as a captain. He does pick up the odd passing bonus. I don't know how long Botman's still out for, but Dan Burn as well just recently came back. I think he was playing last night in the Champions League as well. But I think if you've not got a City player right now or a Chelsea player, you are going to be kind of struggling for a captaincy. But I think in that situation, if you can gamble on a Chelsea player, sure. But obviously, as we just spoke about it, the Chelsea situation isn't ideal. So a Newcastle player does look best, and we do see the lineups for Newcastle. I wouldn't recommend going for Isak because the rotation with Callum Wilson is definitely going to be there, but I think maybe a Newcastle defender that is starting could be a decent option on Saturday. I think you could also maybe look at, obviously this depends on the length of Sanchez's injury, but maybe moving Sanchez onto Dubravka, keeping Dubravka as a captaincy. I think his injury seems to be kind of brushed off now. He played last night in the Champions League, so I think he should be fine. Pope is going to be out to the overhaul, so you could always move Sanchez on to Dubravka, then you get Dubravka for a captaincy, and then you just keep him through to the overhaul. But again, I think Newcastle defender, possibly Dubravka, could be the best option there. Next up, GG Magpie asks, if Romero got a booking on Friday night, would you move him on to another defender at the weekend? Would be a 4 for 2. So this is one I'm going to quickly move on to the spreadsheet for. So obviously Romero's been back for 2 games now since his suspension, and he's picked up 2 yellow cards in both those games, which now puts him 1 yellow card away from another game's suspension. So if he was to pick up a yellow card here, obviously I would say just keep him through it, but if you've got lots of transfers to use, then sure, I see no issue with it. Personally, if he gets a booking, I'll just be keeping him through it because the games look fine enough, and I'm not wanting to use any more transfers. But again, so if he gets booked here, he's going to be suspended for this Everton game, which is going to give you all the way up to here, at which point you're probably not just going to, you probably just keep Romero out at that point if you're definitely going to be bringing him out. So you're probably looking at whatever 2 games this is, so it's a lot of 4 for 2s as you just mentioned. If I was to bring someone in, 7.8 million. Again, I'd probably just look at covering some captaincies off. If you've got the money, maybe go to someone like Bowen. Could always move back to Lewis Dunk, I think could be a good option. That way, yes, Dunk is on 4 yellow cards again, and he obviously could end up missing one of those games, so you would be taking a big risk there. But again, you're maybe getting 2 captaincies out of it if he was to play those. Again, a bit more of a risky move, but it is always an option. I do think maybe a Newcastle player could be quite decent, but obviously they look like they're on very, very bare bones right now with their squad. And it looks like any of their players could pick up injuries at any time right now. So I think literally looking at this, even though you're getting 4 for 2s, the best option would just be to hold. Because there doesn't look like a glaringly obvious pick. Maybe Gross, I suppose. If you've not got Gross, actually, I think that would be a good move. But other than that, I don't think there's a very glaringly obvious pick to move Romero onto, and I think you're probably better just saving the transfer, especially if all your captaincies are covered. Like, if you're really wanting to get Romero out, make sure the captaincies are covered, like, first and foremost. If not, you're looking at a very luxury move. Again, in which case you could move to someone like a Newcastle player. Who else has decent fixtures in here? Again, yeah, Solanke, if you're not taking Haaland out, again, could be quite a decent one. Other than that, again, would probably just look at keeping Romero, to be honest. So for me, if he was to pick up a 5th yellow card, get suspended for the Everton game, I would just be holding right through for these 2 games. But again, if you've got transfers to use, I think Gross looks quite good. Bowen could be quite decent. And overall, it's probably it. You could actually maybe go for João Palhinha. Doesn't pick up, hasn't got any captaincy days even, but he is picking up loads of tackle tiers, and he would just be a solid option right through to the overhaul. But again, it's a very luxury pick. So for me, I think the advice there would literally just be to keep Romero right through the red card. If not, my number 1 pick, if you don't have him, would be to move to Gross. Moving on to Ishmael's question, he asks, I'm on 29 transfers. If Haaland does end up being injured, do I take him out? I'm also waiting on Sanchez injury news. Again, you want to try, especially on 29 transfers, you definitely want to be holding them as much as possible. I don't think Pep's going to give too much away in the press conference tomorrow, unfortunately. And I would say if Haaland is missing tomorrow's game, to take him out, because you're getting a lot of 4 for 0s elsewhere, and even though you're on 29 transfers, sometimes his move just has to be made. I think if you're really wanting to conserve transfers, you could get away with holding Haaland through, considering if he is going to be back on the 27th. We don't know how bad the injury is, so it's hard to really give a definitive answer here. I think if Haaland's back on the 27th, I would keep him, personally. If I'm trying to save transfers, I would accept that 4 games you're going to end up missing out on for other players, but at least you don't have to make 2 transfers to get Haaland back. So you're really, in whatever games that are in between Haaland playing and Haaland not playing, so for example the next 3 game weeks, or 2 game weeks I think it is, but 3 games, you're wanting your player to be scoring about 20 points. So again, if you've got a captaincy there, it's probably going to be worth it. If someone's got like really easy fixtures, again, someone like Solanke, you could expect 20 points from him. I think if whoever you bring in gets 20 points and then you take them back out for Haaland on the 27th, it's going to be worth the 2 transfers. Anything else, probably not worth it. So whoever you're looking at bringing in, have a look at their games before you bring Haaland back, and just check if you think they're going to score 20 points. I think if you are going to bring Haaland out, though, you definitely are going to want him back for the Everton game if he is fit for that game. So just make that consideration, because that's going to take you down to 27 transfers minimum, considering that no other injuries or anything happen. In your situation, though, if Haaland's going to be, like, obviously, it's a big if here. If Haaland's going to be back for Everton, in your situation, I would keep him. I think that's probably the easiest thing to do. Again, still something I have to consider. I've got 30 transfers left, and if he misses tomorrow, I would consider keeping him right through, to be honest, because I don't think there's too many good options. But my first team, I don't have Gross, so I'd maybe look at moving on to Gross and keeping him right through. But again, it's a difficult one for me. In your situation, though, if the injury isn't too bad, I would just keep him right through. Next up, George Thomas asks, who would you captain out of Palmer and Isak on Saturday? So obviously there's no early kick-off on Saturday, so well there's a 3pm kick-off, so we do get to see the lineups for most teams on Saturday. For me, if Isak's starting, I would definitely be captaining him. I can't actually remember if Chelsea's also a 3pm kickoff. If it is, obviously you get to see if Palmer's starting as well. Both of them are starting. I'd be going for Isak. I think if Isak isn't starting and Wilson ends up in the starting 11, obviously you just go for Palmer on that that day there. So for me, I think Isak is the primary striker. He's got a much higher ceiling than Palmer does. I don't think Palmer does much else other than score penalties. And if Nkunku is going to be back in the squad, but she is rumoured to be, maybe Palmer could actually be off penalties there as well. So for me, I think Isak's the easy option there. Obviously, if he's not starting, just go for Palmer. For our penultimate question, Rainbird FPL asks, is Brighton versus Palace skippable? I've got nothing obvious to transfer out for it. In which case, I definitely would say it is skippable. Like, I wouldn't rip up your whole team just so you can have that captaincy. As you seem to suggest, your team's looking in a good spot right now. And Palace Brighton definitely is skippable. I think it could end up easily being a low scoring game. I do still think Gross and Dunk look like the best captaincies for that day. Anyone else, I probably would just miss out. And if you can't get to Dunk or Gross, like with one move, or you wanna save transfers for that, I would just skip it. There's nothing wrong with skipping captaincy days. It's not a day where it's like Man City versus Luton at the Etihad and you don't have a captaincy where you definitely would want one. That's probably going to be a close game, low scoring, and I don't really see any reason why you should rip up your whole team to find a captaincy for that. So for you, I think you look like you seem to be in a good position. I would just let that one go and focus on the next game week. And the final question of the day comes in from All Sports Adam, who says, is Palmer fine to captain on Saturday? I have every captaincy covered as it stands, but if Palmer gets a yellow and Sanchez is out, then I don't. Poch says the injury could be beyond the overhaul. I'd go Petrovic, but he isn't even on the game. So I did briefly touch on this earlier in the video, but Petrovic has now been added into Sky as 6.3 million, which is literally one of the cheapest in the game. He's just like 0.1, 0.2 more expensive than someone like Turner is. So if Petrovic is going to be the goalkeeper up until the overhaul, it does actually look like a pretty decent option. But again, we can't confirm that because we don't know how long Sanchez is going to be out for. I'm not sure. I've not seen the news that you're saying about him. The injury could be beyond the overhaul. Hopefully, we find out in the press conference and we get some concrete news from Pochettino in that. I wouldn't mind captaining Palmer on Saturday. I think if he's your only option, then you can't really do anything else. Ideally, I think there is better captains out there. You can go for better ones, but if you've got someone like Palmer available against Sheffield United, you never really know what's going to happen, and you kind of just have to stick the armband on them. As you said, you've got the captaincy covered coming up. If Palmer gets a yellow, obviously that's not ideal, but I wouldn't be taking someone out to get a third Chelsea captain just on the off chance that the two you've got right now doesn't play. I think if Palmer and Sanchez are both out for the Christmas Eve single, then you just have to skip it. It's just the way things are. But again, in terms of Saturday, I'd just be captaining Palmer. I wouldn't be making so many transfers just again to cover a captaincy, which is already covered, but on the off chance it doesn't happen. So I would just be captaining Palmer, wouldn't be making any transfers. Could always go to Petrovic, but again, I'm not really sure on your transfer account and what kind of situation it is, and obviously we don't have some solid news on Sanchez's injury length right now. So I would just sit on the hands right now, captain Palmer, hope it goes well, and see what kind of news we get closer to the deadline. But that is going to wrap up this week's Q&A video. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, and as always, every Wednesday night we tweet out asking for your questions and dilemmas, so make sure to go and follow me on Twitter up in the top left. It's also got a link in the description if you want to be involved in next week's video. If you are new here, please make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you know exactly when the videos go out, and I will see you all in the next video.